What if doesn't have to be the start of fear. It can be the beginning of freedom. What if midlife isn't the end, but the doorway to a new season filled with more purpose, more peace, more possibility? And in reality, it makes perfect sense given we've got decades of living ahead of us. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. And midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Redefining Midlife. I'd like to start by saying a very big thank you to listeners who have taken the time out of their day to send me some lovely DMs on Instagram about my last couple of solo episodes and how they've really resonated with you. So thank you so much. It means a world to me to know that the conversations are landing and that they're giving you some space to reflect, to reimagine, and to take action in your own life. And this podcast, well, it's really just such a great reminder that there's someone else out there. In fact, a whole community of women from all around the world who understands what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and also what you're going through. And I always love hearing from listeners, so please feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram or send me an email. Bonus points if you leave me a review with your kind thoughts and words. Now, if you're anything like me, when an episode sparks something, I just want to jot a few things down. And I think this might be one where you'll want to listen to with a pen and a journal nearby. Because I'm going to be sharing some simple, but some very powerful prompts and ideas and reflections that could help you see things just a little differently. Today, I want to have a heart-to-heart with you about something that is so deceptively simple. It's something that I wrestled with for such a long time. And they are just two little words that hold so much power. And those words are, what if? Now, these words can stir up fears or they can awaken possibility. They can actually hold us back or they can open us up to something that's completely new. And for years, the negative what if answers that I'd invent kept me from so much in my own personal and professional life. That is until I decided to do something about it. And for so many of the women that I mentor, the moment that everything begins to shift is when I encourage them to ask, well, what if something more is possible? So let's start exploring that today because I believe asking better what ifs could actually change everything for you too. So let's talk about what if and the fear or the freedom that it brings. So let's be honest, we've all had those what ifs that keep us stuck. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I don't have what it takes? And these fear-based what ifs often creep in there quietly, and often they're so quietly and so soft that we barely notice them running the show. They're the ones that whisper the worst case scenarios into our minds and they convince us to play small. They often like to come to visit at 3 a.m. as well when you're lying in bed at night. And they play on constant repeat, keeping us awake. And then we repeat them so often that we come to believe that they're 100% true. But here's the thing that I want you to keep in mind. Those worst case scenarios that often answer the what if questions are often coming from a place of protection. Our brains are wired to avoid discomfort and to avoid uncertainty because our brain just loves to keep us safe and in the familiar. But in doing so, it can also prevent us from growing into who we're meant to be next. Here's a big what if that is so clear and like yesterday for me. So I remember when I was deciding to leave my long-standing career in education. I loved being a teacher and a leader in my school and a leader in my community, but then something in me had shifted. I also had this quiet nudge that there was something else that I was meant to do. But I kept on thinking, What if I leave and it doesn't work out? What if I regret it? What if I fail? What if everyone else thinks it's a wrong thing to do? And to be honest, these questions and the endless possible answers kept me stuck. And it was only when I asked some new questions that the real breakthrough came through. So then I asked myself, what if it works out? What if I create something that's even more aligned? What if this is the beginning of something extraordinary? And the most telling question of all for me, what if nothing changes? That was a moment that things began to change. So let's talk about, how do you flip that script? So what I've learned, both personally and in my mentoring, is that what if doesn't have to be the start of fear. It can be the beginning of freedom. What if midlife isn't the end, but the doorway to a new season filled with more purpose, more peace, more possibility? And in reality, it makes perfect sense given we've got decades of living ahead of us. What if you're not behind? What if you're right on time? What if you already have everything you need to begin again? What if you said yes to yourself? We spend so much time trying to figure out everything before we even take that first step. But you don't need to know exactly where that path leads. At every turn, there are even more possibilities that can open up before us. You just need to follow the next what if that lights you up, that thing that lights something inside of you. So what do you do then when your what if feels that damn scary? And I want to take a moment here and really acknowledge something that often gets skipped over. It is incredibly common and also completely normal to fear the what if scenario. Most women that I work with have spent years, sometimes even decades, weighing all the possible and endless scenarios of what could go wrong. And as I said before, our beautiful brain loves to protect us from disappointment, protect us from failure, and from the unknown. And it does that by imagining every single worst case scenario and outcome that's possible. What if I mess it up? What if I lose money? What if people think I'm ridiculous? These thoughts truly can be paralyzing. And even though it feels like it, these thoughts, they're not a sign that you're not ready. They're actually a sign that your nervous system is doing its job. It's keeping you in the familiar, where it feels safe. Here's a truth I want you to hold on to. That kind of thinking, well, it might keep you safe, but it doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you to experience the endless, incredible possibilities and experiences in life. And when you look at what might go wrong, you miss the entire other side of the equation. What if something amazing happens? What if you meet people who inspire and uplift you? What if you finally feel aligned with your purpose? What if you surprise yourself? And there's a beautiful line by Australian poet Erin Hansen from her poem, What If You Fly? Perhaps you've heard or read it before because it's often quoted. And she writes, "There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky, and you ask yourself, what if I fall? But my darling, what if you fly?" Most of the things that are holding you back are in your mind. So once you learn how to control those thoughts and all of those negative beliefs, you can change that self-talk. And also just remind yourself, taking a risk doesn't have to mean you're leaping without a net. It can simply mean choosing one small step forward. In fact, one of the most powerful questions that I ask the women that I mentor is this: what if nothing changes? What if you keep putting yourself last? What if you keep silencing your dreams? What if 5 years from now, you're still wondering, if I'd only just tried? That's a powerful reality check, and it's often the turning point. So I challenge you to ask yourself some of those questions. And in my mentoring work, this is what we really explore deeply together. We don't bypass all of those fears that come up. We actually start to unpack them. And you get to say the things out loud that you've never told anyone, the thoughts that often ruminate in your own mind. And you get to be challenged, with care obviously, on the beliefs that are holding you back. And then, with some support, you create your own plan, your plan, step by step. So we begin by identifying the smallest actions that you can take right now, actions that are going to move you closer to your dreams and your goals, not away from it, from the life that you truly want. Because as we know, change does not happen in one giant leap. I totally implore that you don't try to do something in one big leap. Instead, take those small steps, because real change happens in consistent, supported, and intentional movement. And I'll get you to answer that same question yourself honestly. What's one small step that you could take? Here's where you might like to grab your pen and your journal if you haven't already, because I'm going to give you a simple practice that you might like to try this week. Each morning, ask yourself a new kind of what if question. One that opens rather than closes, and one that leans towards possibility. Here are just a few what if questions to start with. What if I said no to something that drains me today? What if I put myself first, even just once? What if I reached out for support? What if I let myself dream again? What if I stopped waiting? Even writing one what if in your journal each day can begin to change the lens through which you see your life. And you don't have to do this perfectly. Just start by playing with the question. Let it stretch your thinking. Let it move you. Let's start thinking about the things that could happen that are more positive rather than every possible negative scenario. Because what if is where it all changes. So, my lovely friend, I just invite you, get curious and notice how you answer your what if questions. What's that whisper that's been nudging you? What if you actually listened to it? What if you gave yourself permission to really fully explore it? You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to ask a question and trust where it leads. Also trust that you don't have to believe every single one of those negative thoughts, because those negative thoughts are not the reality. Remember, what if isn't the end of a story. It's actually the beginning of a new one that you can write. One where you prioritize yourself, one that feels expansive, where your future feels wide open, and one where you step into your power and take responsibility, full responsibility, for your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions. And if you're at that point where your what if is just growing louder and louder, and you're ready to turn that whisper into action, and you want some support, then I would love to invite you to book a free connection call with me. Now, I work closely with women who are ready to reimagine what life could look like and walk toward it with more clarity and courage. Now, I know that one of my clients won't mind me sharing part of our conversation that we had during our first mentoring session together recently, because I asked her why she decided to get support from me. And she said it was because she knew she'd just keep on believing that bullshit story that she tells herself, and she needed to have someone else help her believe in something better. I think we can resonate with that, because I know that I felt that same way. Let's just say she's got a very different set of what ifs in her life right now. And I'd love this to be your new reality too. You'll find that link to book a connection call in the show notes or over at joeclarkcoaching.com. So that's it for today's episode, but I'm going to see you next week with a super powerful interview with author, speaker, and disability advocate, the incredible Lisa Cox. So don't miss that one. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to make the next chapter of your life the best one yet. And remember to share this episode with someone else who would love it, and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Jo Clark Coaching. All the links and the details from today's episode are in the show notes or at joclarkcoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe this show on your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps more midlife women find these empowering conversations. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Until then, take care and keep creating a life that you love.